Hello, hello, Kingdom entrepreneurs. Michelle here, and this is just another season or another series in our Momentum in March conversations. And so today I have a special guest with you. I cannot wait to have this conversation with her. And let me just introduce her. Her name is Tuere Denton-Forbes. She is the founder of Empowered to Fit, and she is a life and wellness coach. And today we're going to have this very interesting conversation, and I almost want to say transformational conversation of how momentum and wellness and fitness go together. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. So hello, Tuere.
Well, how are you?
I am doing fabulous, fabulous today. And so I'm excited to have this conversation. And, I have my own personal questions that I'm probably going to sneak in here, as well as questions that I think that really would benefit our community. So, okay, let's go ahead and get started. Tell me a little bit about yourself, what you do, and how you come to where you are in the now.
Wow. Okay. So I definitely, first of all, am a wife, a mother. As you have already shared, I'm the founder of Empower to Fit. I am an educator as well. And so I am someone that's just passionate about health and wellness, but also empowering specifically working mothers and working wives to be intentional about our health and wellness. And the way that I came into embracing this calling is from one, losing both of my parents to what was preventable diseases, and two, having my own life challenge or health challenge. During that time, actually in between losing both of them, that challenged my life and initially had me thinking that my time was drawing near too, because I was going through the grief processes of losing my dad. So when my challenge happened, I was like, okay, well, I'm next, type of thinking. But having to realize that I had to reclaim my health from various strongholds to be able to stand as the CEO of my wellness and move forward through that process. And so whenever we have a health challenge, we often struggle with being optimistic all the time about the outcome. Some of us have challenges with having access to the resource we need to, be able to make changes in our life. And so doing that with my own life encouraged me to want to be that person to walk along with someone else or stand in the gap with them, as they're going through and until they are strong enough to continue to walk on their own.
Okay. There's two things you said that hit me. First of all, the term CEO of my wellness. I love that. So
Yes.
tell me a little bit more about what does that mean to be the CEO of your wellness?
So, we all know CEO stands for Chief Executive Officer, right? In many corporations, organizations, right? And so we are that in that role for our health and wellness. When I was going through my health challenge, I was in the doctor's office sometimes every other week, at least once a month, trying to get answers, going there because of my symptoms, trying to prevent myself from dying during that time when I thought I was dying. And I realized that I had to take ownership. Like, yes, I needed the doctor's support. Yes, they specialize in different things, but at the end of the day, I sit at the head of my wellness team, which include my doctors and my specialists and my holistic people and all of that. The final decision was mine. So the decision of whether or not I was going to change my eating was mine. The decision of whether or not I was going to exercise regularly was mine. The decision of whether or not I was going to continue to listen to the negativity that was making me think I was dying was mine. All of those things was my decision. And so as the chief executive officer of my life and my wellness, I make that my decision. I use all the information they bring to the table, just like when you sitting at a corporate executive table. Everybody contributes. But at the end of the day, the CEO signs off on what the plan is. So that's what we're doing is signing off on what's the plan of the next step that we're going to take in this journey.
Wow, I love that. Okay, that's a totally different visual for me. I'm sitting at the head of the table for my well of my health, so I love that. Okay, and there's something else you brought up that really coincides with momentum. So, for me, God showed me 5 phases of momentum. So when it comes to kingdom momentum, there's 5 phases, and the number one phase is the call. And so I remember you talking about the calling to begin to work and minister and share your giftings and talents in this. So tell me more about the call to this that you've had.
Wow. So during the journey of my health challenge, there was a time when I just was so fed up with dealing with the symptoms of um, the disease at the time, before it even had a name on it, right? And so this particular morning, the what ended up being was Lyme disease. But the symptoms were so impactful in a negative way that I was tired. I was getting anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour of sleep at night. My body constantly felt like somebody had poured gasoline on me and lit a match. And mine, I know from my symptoms was like neurologically because of the way that it impacted my thought process and then the symptoms that I had in my head and in my spine and things of that nature. But at the time, I didn't know what it was. And so this particular morning, I was sleep deprived. I was in pain. My body was hurting. I was got my daughter prepared for preschool and was dropping her off, getting ready to drop her off. And I took her and dropped her off. And when I dropped her off, the preschool teacher could see something in me that was not right. And at that time, so there was an in-home preschool. She had asked her teammate to get my child and take her into the dining area so she can have breakfast. And she was like, because I need to pray with her. And at that time, I just began to weep and I was like, I can't do this anymore. I was just like, I don't know, I'm hurting, I'm tired. We can't, the doctor keeps saying this, I've been to this specialist, that specialist, all of this. And I just can't do this anymore. And we sat in the floor of the preschool classroom and just wept together. And she just prayed over me. And then I, in turn, asked her if I can pray over her. And what I found out later was that she needed that moment with me just as much as I needed that moment with her. But I was still so just in a moment of not wanting to continue in the way that I was feeling, that when I was leaving there, I said, God, I'm not bold enough to end my life. But if you decided that today was the last day, I would be okay with that because I got tired of my husband and my daughter seeing me suffer. And so I remember leaving there. I was getting ready to go to work. I was working a summer program, and I was getting ready to go to work. And I said that. And in that moment, the Holy Spirit said, Tuere, this is not the end. You're in the pit because you have to be in the pit because I'm going to use your testimony to help other people. But the only way they're going to listen to you if they know that you've been in a pit and you know what it's like to be in the pit. And in that moment, I realized that it was a part of the process, but not the final chapter of the process.
Gotcha. Wow, powerful, powerful. Yeah, yeah. And that's the thing. We all have our different call stories, as I call them. God calls us in so many different ways, but it's always the right way for us. It's always the right way for where he's called us to be. So loving that. Now, this is a channel for kingdom entrepreneurs. So my question to you is, what does health and wellness have to do with being an entrepreneur?
Oh, so, health is wealth, right? We can't do anything without our temple. As an entrepreneur, there's so many pieces to it. You know that. When you first start out as an entrepreneur, you are everything. You are the strategist, the one that creates the ideas and the vision to put them into play. You are the content creator. You are the social media manager. You are the product, creator, all of that stuff. But we can't do that without our temple. We need this body that we live in to be able to do it. And so in order to have this body function at the utmost existence that it can, we got to take care of it. And that means being intentional about taking care of it. And when people think about, health and wellness, the first thing that comes to mind is fitness. It is so much more than that. I often use the phrase from crown to soul. What is your fitness or health regimen from crown to soul? What are you doing mentally on a regular basis to restore your mind? What are you doing, physically from, from your neck on down to restore your body? But also, what are you doing, when you think about health, what do your finances look like? You can't run a business if you don't have money coming in, or even if you're not a business owner, you can't, continue to get up and go and do the things that you need to do to provide for your house if there's not money coming in, if you're not managing your finances well. Um, and so when I'm talking or working with clients or working with whole groups, we're talking about not just the physical piece of it, we're talking about the 8 dimensions of it, the various dimensions of wellness. So for an entrepreneur, it can't just be, oh, well, I'm going to work out. I work out 5 days a week, or I work out 3 days a week, but I'm not taking time to get quiet, to quiet my mind, because my mind is constantly going because I'm in front of a screen all the time, or I'm in front of people all the time. So I'm always listening to people, but I'm not being quiet to listen to what God is saying to me, or to just be quiet in my mind and where I'm not thinking about anything, or I'm just releasing those thoughts on my own. Or what am I doing to even the wellness of being able to help other people? So sometimes people, entrepreneurs, get into business and they only thinking about how they're gaining. But there's a part time when we're intended to pour into somebody else, and that's wellness. For me, that's a greater gift than just what I'm doing for my business. Being able to pour into somebody else is so much a greater gift, because then that means the knowledge that I share with them is multiplying, and it's going to be shared, or it's going to multiply in their life. And so we cannot exist as entrepreneurs or great entrepreneurs without being intentional about our health and wellness. When I think about my traditional training in counseling, in school counseling to be specific, my advisor told me, to where every great counselor has a counselor, right? So, and I take that to heart. I didn't realize what that meant at the time, but when I went through losing my father and my mother and my health challenge, I realized that, though I knew various counseling skills that had helped many children and families, now was the time for me to take off the hat and allow somebody else to help me. So even with an entrepreneur, when are you taking time for somebody to pour into you as well, to mentor you through the process of being an entrepreneur, to help you think, have a different perspective about doing business? That's a part of health and wellness as well. So it's not just physical, there's different dimensions of it. And we have to be intentional about pouring into our temple from the crown to the soul to take care of ourselves so that we can continue to show up in what we've been called to do.
Yeah, so I know in a minute I'm gonna ask you to give me at least a couple of the dimensions, because you went way, what'd you say, from crown to soul? So I was like, okay, I'm taking this in. And one of the first things you said was health is wealth. And I think we've heard that comment, we've heard the quote, but
Mhm.
I don't think, I'm going to say many of us, because I feel like then even our country will look different, but many of us have really adopted, taken on that mindset, taken on that belief, especially with entrepreneurs. It's like, especially when you're a solopreneur, you're right. You're everything. Your marketing, your sales, your customer service, your back end, front end. You're all the things, and that becomes, if we're not careful, the priority. That becomes what's important, and oftentimes we put health aside. Like, I'll
Right.
get to the exercise, I'll get to the water, I'll get to the sleep, I'll get to the soul care. Soon as and whatever your goal is or whatever. And so, why do you think entrepreneurs struggle with this, um, believing that health is wealth?
I think we struggle with believing the health as well because we live in a society where immediate gratification is preferred. So we want it right now. We want a successful business right now. We want fast food right now. We want money right now. We want things right now. We want advancement right now. And we want health right now. So I'm just going to do this little quick thing. I'm going to go do this thing at the gym real quick. And then, I'm good. And so when we think about, again, health and wellness, we think about physical fitness, but how many times have we heard of somebody that, was known to be physically fit, but still end up dying from something? And they was like, oh, well, he or she was physically fit. And yeah, but there still could have been some things going on in the inside that were not, and maybe it wasn't in the physical body, maybe it was in the mind. We think about people that we've heard that have committed suicide. And so if we're not taking care again of our health from our crown to our soul, then we are setting up an environment for toxicity and what I like to call is dis-ease. I like to break the word disease up, dis-ease to set in and to be able to manifest in our bodies. And so I feel like our overall propensity to be patient and to be consistent has declined because of the immediate gratification. So we, when you look at social media, everybody look like they got it all and they, it came overnight or, it only took them a
Right.
year.
Yeah,
Or,
30
what's
days,
what's
7 days.
exactly
Yeah,
where you see yourself in 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, And so we set our plan according to some of those same time frames when it might not be God's time frame for what he's called us to do. And we have to be okay for that, with that, and I am currently walking that out in my life, even with Empower to Fit. He gave me the vision. When he first gave me the vision, I took off running down the field and he was like, oh, nope, you was just supposed to go to the fit 5 yard. You down there on the other team then. You just supposed to go right here, and crashed and burned from being overwhelmed because he has not released me from my traditional form of work yet.
right,
And so he's like, that's, I know what you see. You see all the other health advocates doing their own thing, left their job. And that's not what I called you to do,
right.
because there's work for you to do where you are with what I'm giving you and what I've given you.
Mhm.
But you want to let that go and just run and do it. And we cannot. It's a process. And
Right,
he wants us to do it with our health intact. God never gave us our health to sacrifice it for the vision that he's given us. It's a part of the process.
right. Awesome. So instant gratification, that's so interesting that you should mention that. And so if our society, I'll say, is kind of governed, led by instant gratification, um, what what are a few tips to step out of a mindset of instant gratification?
Mhm. So the first one I would say is surrender your current mindset.
Okay.
Surrender, let go of your current desires and your habit to continue to live the way that you're living,
Okay.
right? So we can say, I want to make changes. I want to change my health. I want to lose weight. I want to eat healthier. I want to carve out time to meditate or get outside or whatever the goal may be. But at the same time, I got to get this money. I got to build this business. I got to get this number of products out. I got to make sure I have this much traffic on my website, this many sales. I got to have this amount of profit. You can't achieve the health and wellness goal if you are still stuck in the mindset of the immediate gratification and the things that have to happen right now. And so when you're surrendering, you're taking time to get quiet with God and say, okay, you gave me this vision. What's your plan for it? That's something that I had to dial back and do. And like, okay, you gave me the vision. I took off running. I didn't even ask you what the blueprint was. I didn't even ask you what the name was. I came up with this name because that's what my life looked like when I had to change it. But you never said that was supposed to be the name of this business, because Empower to Fit was not the initial name of it.
Right.
It was something else. And
Mhm.
so that's the first step, is surrendering how you are currently operating, what your current mindset is, to God, and saying, okay, God, I want to do this your way.
Right.
And then the next one is believing. So everything, my grandmother used to tell me all the time, everything starts with a thought. And we would have this conversation when we would talk about how these new inventions were coming up. And she was like, Tuere, everything starts with a thought. And that's not just for being innovative, but it's also with our lives, and every decision we made. In order to become an entrepreneur, we had at some point had to believe that we could do it, or that we could produce that thing that everybody need, that service, that product, or whatever. So there was a belief behind it. We had to take the attitude that it was true, that we can walk in there. So the same thing about our health and wellness. We got to believe that we are intended to be healthy, that we are intended to do what been called to do, whether it's producing a product, a service, whatever it is that we do in our business, but to do it well in wellness. Like,
Right.
we have to believe that. And then the next thing I think about is breathing and resting. So the breathing and the resting goes back to when I mentioned about meditating and getting quiet. That's the breathing part. Because when we're in this immediate gratification, if we think about it, we're constantly going. When are we slowing our heart rate down?
Mm,
Just to slow it down to be able to process in the moment that we're in right now.
right.
When are we slowing down to reflect on the decisions we've made in the day or the decisions that we made in the week? When are we getting quiet to think about what are the things we're telling ourselves to keep us from living in wellness? Like that's a whole,
Okay.
again, things starts with a thought. I don't have time. You telling yourself that if you're telling yourself all the time you don't have time, that's why you don't have time.
Right.
If you're telling yourself all the time that you're too busy, that's why you're too busy. If you're telling yourself all the time that you don't like vegetables, to still hear grown-ups say that today, then you don't like vegetables, but you're
I
telling yourself that.
I know grown-ups who don't eat them to this day. I don't even, I'm like,
Right.
how are you living? I don't even know what
And
that looks like.
and that those are our living foods.
Yeah. Wow.
So they give life back to us, but we don't like them, but we like living.
Mm,
So it's like, it's counterproductive. And I think about with the whole breathing and resting part, there's I believe I don't know if she still calls herself this, but at the time that I just crossed paths with her through social media, she called herself a transformational coach, and her name is Lisa Nichols. And so she has this process called exposing the lies that
mhm,
she was sharing in this particular YouTube clip that I was watching. And I applied that to my life, but then I added an extra step to it. So it's pretty much where you are writing down all the things that you tell yourself, and between each thing you like giving space in between it and writing it in pencil. She specifically says write it in pencil, everything that you tell yourself. And she tells you get like 12 to 16 sheets of paper because you never know if you're gonna need it. Better not to need it than to need it. And so, I was doing this thing, and then she tells you now, after you write all the lies that you've told yourself throughout your life that are creating barriers to help prevent you from being successful, go back and now write the truths. What are the truths about that instead of that lie? But this time, write this in red ink pen because it's replacing that lie
mm,
with the truth. And so I had to do this with my life, everything from my finances that I was always going to live check to check because that's what I saw my mother do.
mm,
That I was dying of cancer because that's how my daddy died. The different things that I was telling myself that was creating barriers and walls from me moving forward or moving past that. I had to do it. That my marriage was not going to be successful because I didn't have many examples in my life growing up. All of that.
Now, how
But I
often
took
do you
my
have to do that,
so
that
for
process?
me, the process, when she explains it, she tells you to take no more than I think like 3 or 4 days. So
Mhm,
you don't want it to be a long drawn out process because you want to commit time to doing the brain dump of the lies that you told yourself.
mhm,
And so I just carved out time to sit and do it. And it became overwhelming. I couldn't believe some of the stuff that I was telling myself because of what I had experienced in life. And I was still holding on to that. And so that thought made me think the stinking thinking that I was thinking to keep me trapped
mhm,
in strongholds. And so, then the extra piece that I added to my process was because I was like, you know what, man's word is doubtful. We can doubt man's word. But I got the Bible and found a scripture that that
the
made my
thing,
truths,
right.
that confirmed my truths. Because God's word doesn't return void.
Mhm,
So when I wanted to doubt what I said, but I have this scripture right here, then I can go back and be like, no, but God, you said that's why this is my truth.
mhm, mhm,
And so it's a process. And I did that probably in 2017, 18. I still have my paper and go back and look at it, at my truths. Because the negativity, the things that have caused us to doubt ourselves are going to continuously come. But God's word tells
right,
us to renew our mind. So I have to renew my mind and what's the truth based on what God's word said.
right.
And his word tells us that we have to rest.
Mhm,
His word tells us that we need to get quiet. His word tells us that we need to shut down the chatter. His word tells us that he bought us with a price. So our temple really is not ours, it's on loan. So when
mhm,
somebody lets you borrow something, you're supposed to take care of it as if it was that, they were there with you.
right,
And
right.
so that's what we have to do.
Yeah. And I think sometimes, like you said, all this is tying back to the instant gratification. We're thinking, okay, I did it once, I'm good.
Right.
But that's not
Mm-mm.
how it works. We have to continue to work on it, continue to practice it. What were you gonna say?
And I was just, because when you was like instant gratification, I did it once. As an entrepreneur, if you only sold one of your product, one unit of your product, is that enough to sustain your business?
Right.
If you only had one session, one group, whatever service you provide, is that enough to sustain your business? You have to practice what's working over and over again. Same thing with our health. We have to do it over and over again. And then, the last, when you were saying like tips, the last one is shift it and move. Like whoever has your ear has your future. Who are you listening to? Even if it's yourself, you got to change that. And then you need to surround yourself with people who are living what you're working to accomplish. So if you're working to accomplish being more intentional about your health and wellness, what entrepreneurs are doing that well?
Mm-hmm.
And begin to make sure you're interacting with them or listening to them and their strategies to keep you motivated and empowered to be consistent.
Right.
And then you got to be willing to do the last one with the shift and move is willing to do something different than what's currently not working. Felt the sneeze coming on. Or what's not sustainable for long term.
Right.
We got to be willing to do something different. Right. So physically, it doesn't have to be the gym. When I lost weight a couple of years ago, when I finally was like, okay, Tuere, your daughter's 3 years old, it's no longer baby weight. Stop saying that. I didn't lose it in the gym. I didn't lose the weight in the gym. I lost it working out in my family room, in my dining room. In my living room. I created a space for me to work out. I had to sacrifice and get up an hour earlier than I was getting up. I had to be intentional about meal planning. I had to incorporate getting outside and walking. And then when I was taking her to the playground, I was running and playing with her. Swings, the jungle gym, all that stuff, because it allowed me to move and stop using the excuse of I don't have time, because I thought I had to compartmentalize it all the time. Okay, I can do this right now. I'm a mommy right now. I'm a wife right now. I don't have time to just work out. Incorporate it in your days.
Right.
And then that allowed me to show her that being active is important.
Right. Oh yeah, because they're watching,
Exactly.
Sometimes I say with, kids, whether they want to or not, they're watching, they're paying attention. And some things, you teach and some things are caught. And so they're catching what you're doing, the different habits that you're taking on. So I agree with that.
Yes. And they are quick to remind you that what you say and what you do does not align.
Right. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And I think, when you talk, okay, that's a great word, alignment. Because when you were talking, I had a recent revelation that alignment is action. And a lot of people say, okay, I'm going to align myself to Word of God. I'm going to align myself to God's will or plan for my life. And then they're thinking, okay, I've done it. Like just by saying it now makes it true. But it only comes through action. So like you were describing, intentional actions that will make, I know for me, some of the things I've learned as I've been going through these fitness journeys, these wellness journeys, not just the fitness physical part, but the wellness too, is that for me to experience change, I'm going to have to change my life. So I can't hold on. We talked about letting go. I can't hold on to what I was doing before and then say, I'm going to do these things and not do the action and without seeing that. And so I think that's something that I've definitely noticed when you talk about the intentional action, the shift and the move. It's like I had to shift my life. And I'm like, oh, so I can't just go to bed whenever I want. Oh, I just can't wake up when I feel like, oh, I just can't eat what's convenient. Oh, the drive-through cannot just be my, my daily bread, so to speak.
Right.
So, yeah. So, and it wasn't until I was like, okay, I'm going to have to shift these things. I'm going to have to start moving. Yeah.
So when you just said that, Marcelles, there was two things that came to mind. When you was talking about how you had to change your life. So when my daughter was 1, I was like overwhelmed with all the roles, right? And I was like, okay, I need to go talk to somebody. And I remember talking to my husband, like, okay, I need to go see a counselor. His first thing was like, well, just tell me what I'm doing. And I was like, but wait a minute, yes, you're a part of it, but it's not just you.
Right.
Because it's men sometimes, see counseling as like a weakness. You're admitting to a weakness.
Mhm.
And so when I went to work with this counselor, that was the first time that I had worked with a counselor outside of my college advisor, as an adult. And she said, Tuere, what it is that your coping skills that used to work for you aren't working anymore. You got to change them because your life has changed.
Mhm.
So what used to work for you as Tuere, the single person, doesn't work for Tuere, the mother, the wife, the professional educator. It doesn't work for that person anymore. So you got to change that.
Right, right.
On top of that, we even began to do some root work
Mm.
on those things that I had been telling myself because of what I had experienced in childhood.
Mhm. Mhm.
So we went back that far, and I didn't realize that I was still holding on to things that was preventing me from progressing further in life in these different roles because I had not dealt with them. I swept them under the carpet or just moved past them or thought out of sight was out of mind. But now they were coming up because things, my life began to change.
Mhm.
And she was like, if you don't begin to change the way that you cope with things, then you're going to start self-sabotaging or you're going to crash and burn even more. And
Gotcha.
so, like you said, I had to change my life. I had to change how I was responding to those challenges. And then the other thing that came up when you were sharing that, I have on my wall just different quotes from either myself or different people that have empowered me along the way. And one of them is a quote from Patrice Washington. I used to listen to a podcast on regularly. And there was a particular time where she said, God knows what you're waiting on when he sees what you're working on.
Oh.
So we praying for him to, we want to change our health and wellness, but we not working on it. Or
Mhm.
we want our business to, become more profitable, but we not working on it. Or we want our marriage to or relationship that we're in to become more to be healthier, but we're not working on it. We just want the other person to change, but we're not working on it.
Right.
Or we want our children to stop doing X, Y, and Z, but we're not being intentional about spending time with them and modeling the things that we need for them to do. We not modeling healthy communication skills with them. We just want to pray about it and he do it, but
Yeah.
we don't want to do the work.
Yeah. Boy, you're speaking to me right now, and I want to go down that trail with you, but I'm not doing it. I'm not doing that this time. That means we have to come back. We have to come back. But I want you to talk on two things. I feel like we've already talked about it. For those who are listening and watching, I believe we've already answered this question, but I want to be real specific and real clear on it. So there's two things. One thing is, what is wellness?
Mhm.
And then the second thing is, what does the kingdom of God have to do with wellness? So let's talk about
So
what is wellness.
wellness to me is the way that we intentionally take care of ourselves so that we can continue to show up for what God has called us to do.
Okay, got it.
It's how we take care of ourselves from again, remember the crown to the soul,
Mm-hmm.
not just the physical, not just the financial, the mental, everything. Even if for those of us that are still working for someone else, how do we show up at work intentionally? What are we doing to pour into that role that we carry out at work? So it's the intentional work that we're doing to continue to show up for who God has called us to be in the various roles or hats that we wear every day.
Got it. Okay, got it. So now, what does the kingdom of God have to do with wellness?
I think that goes back to what I said about, and I believe it's First Corinthians 6:19 and 20 that says, God brought us with the price, he sacrificed his son for us.
Okay,
So that was the first thing. Like he gave up something in order for us to be, to exist, to have, to be forgiven, to be restored, to heal. That was the price he paid. So he modeled what we are supposed to be doing on a regular basis. And when we are doing that on a regular basis, then that means that we are operating in kingdom. So for instance, sacrifice, which is what he did, right?
mm-hmm.
Sacrificing eating, when you talked about, fast food being the
My daily
bread,
bread.
your daily
Yeah,
bread, sacrificing eating fast food 7 days a week or 5 days a week to cutting it back to less than. so that we can be intentional about whether it's making a meal, whether it's about ordering, the different vendors that deliver fresh to your house. So then, that removes the stuff of having to prep, whatever that is, but being intentional about putting living foods in our body so that they can continue to pour into the life we want to live, to continue to show up in what we're called to do.
Right, right. Yeah.
That's kingdom, because if you when I think about a kingdom, I think when visually what comes in my mind, people might think about castles or, whatever the case may be, but I think about infinite place, right? But it's not just one person. It consists of several beings being in there, right? And those beings in there have to take care of so that the kingdom can continue to exist, right? But in order for us to take care of the kingdom, we have to first take care of the temple. So think about it this way. The way that we take care of our temple, which is can be looked at as a small version of a kingdom, right? Because I look at it like Holy Spirit lives within me, mind, body, and spirit. I have to take care of myself from the crown of soul. What if God says, you know what? If you're gonna take care of my kingdom the way you're taking care of that body, then why am I gonna continue to give you more when you showing me that you can't handle more? And that makes it even think about that too. Like, we're praying for God to expand our territories.
Right.
But we're not stewarding over the territory we have right now.
Right.
Or God may be saying, you want more, but you need to be healthy in order to go over here where I'm trying to take you.
Yeah, that's so true, because I remember, so for my business, one of them, I travel, so I'm in the airport a lot, and especially Atlanta airport, because it's like a stop in between. And I don't know, for those who've been there, that is a very big airport. And I remember, and then they like to change the gates on you and all this stuff. And so for me, oftentimes it's a lot of walking, sometimes not fast running, but a little jog to get where you need to go. And I remember when I would struggle with that, because I think I don't even know, the first time or the first two times, I was so out of shape. I felt like I was having a heart attack. And I was like, what is this? And I remember, God's like, I have need of you. So this right here, we're going to have to shift that, because I have need of you. And how can you fulfill the assignment that I've called you to fulfill if your body's all jacked up and you can't even make it to the next gate without a problem? So when you think, and I love when you talked about how can we take care of the kingdom, or how can we even advance the kingdom if we're not even taking care of and advancing our temple?
Right.
I mean,
exactly.
What if the temples all fall apart and they on the side of the road trying to get some air, you know? So
Right.
powerful. That's powerful. Okay. All right. And so also, when we talk about our wellness, what are some ways that an entrepreneur can position themselves for momentum in the area of wellness? What are a few ways they can position themselves to gain momentum for that?
So I feel like as you was asking that question, the first thing that came to mind was like systems and structures, right? And I say that because we'll put systems and structures in place for our business to be successful. We got to do the same thing for our health and wellness. And so for me, I'll just share some things that I do, right? So for instance, one of the things that's a standing process for me is I have a weekly meeting with myself, right?
Okay.
So in that weekly meeting, I look at what I've accomplished for the week, what I didn't accomplish, what needs to roll over to next week. But also, I am intentional about making sure I carve out time, like exercising is a non-negotiable. I
Okay.
have to do that. I know I'm a morning exerciser.
Mhm.
Afternoon, if I wait till the afternoon, I have all the excuses,
Mhm.
and I'm mentally and physically depleted. So I've realized morning has to be my time.
Mhm.
And the sacrifice is getting up at 4:45 instead of 5:30.
Gotcha.
I have to. Initially, it was difficult, very, because I thought about that extra sleep, even if I couldn't sleep, just laying there, or all the things that I could be doing. But when we move, the benefit of movement outweighed my excuses for not doing it.
Right. Right.
Right. So my plan, when I was planning my week, it has to have that in there. The other thing that I've become more consistent about for me is making time to journal. And so I used to be one that could journal every day. My life not set up like that no more.
Right.
So now I have to journal at least weekly. Saturdays are my time. And I love it because it allows me to reflect on what the week was like and just to talk for me, I like to consider them, I'm actually just writing letters to God. He already know it, but I'm writing it out, right? And so it allows me to reflect. And then too, that's the time when he started dropping stuff in my spirit too. Because what? I've limited the distractions and I'm just being quiet, having a conversation with him. Because during the week, everybody else has my attention in different ways. And it's like, he like double dutch trying to get in. But when I take time to journal, it's like, okay, God, let's talk. And sometimes it's me talking to him, and other times I might just sit there and I might get one word on the page because
Right.
it was just time for me to be quiet.
Right.
And so that's how you are building momentum when you're being intentional about planning out. And when I say plan, but just sketching out a living blueprint, I should say, of what your week or day is going to look like, because then you're not just being responsive
Right.
all the time with people calling, emailing, whatever their means is to distract you or to get your attention for something that they need you to do or that needs your attention. But you're being intentional about making time for the things that you need to do to continue to get to the next thing that you need to get to.
Right. That's powerful.
And then when you get off track, it gives you something to go back to. So when I've gotten distracted, I go back to my plan and was like, okay, wait a minute, what was I supposed to be doing today?
I'm so glad you said that, because I feel like on one level, I know when I mention to people, they're like, they resonate with it, but no one really talks about, I'm like, none of y'all wake up, be like, I don't even know what I'm supposed to be doing. Like, I don't even know, who am I? What is life about? What am I supposed to, like, I have to sometimes get those, I have seasons where I have to have a reminder that I could go to, look at, read, meditate on, get quiet about, because I don't always wake up fully aware. I'll put it like that. I'm just kind of like empty, and I need to be able to focus on something. It's just not always in here, So that's so powerful. Yeah, that you have that system you can go back to and realign yourself to.
And it allows you to see what are the things, at least for me, what are the things that I was planning to do that really are not important.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
No, that really are not important. So when I look at my planner, sometimes I'm like, oh my God, all this is what I was going through this all my mind. And then I'm like, okay, well, Tuere, you don't have to do that this week.
Right.
Let's put that off. But I'm one that want to go ahead and get it done, so it's not continuously on my to-do list.
Right.
So, but I have to then prioritize. Okay, I have this list of things. What's the priority? What's your top three big rocks for the day?
Okay. Yeah.
And so if I only got those three things done, I wouldn't feel like I didn't accomplish something,
Right.
because those are the three priorities for the day.
Got you. I have this, I don't know if you struggle with this, but I have this mug that says, I have too many tabs open or something like that in my brain, or whatever. And sometimes I even struggle with narrowing it down to the three. Because sometimes I'm like, these are all important. And then I'm like, let me try the six. And so sometimes I struggle with the six. But at the end of the day, we only have so many hours. We only have so much bandwidth. So if you don't make the decision, it'll make it for you. But if you're not intentional, then what ends up happening may not be what was a priority or what was so valuable to moving you forward. So that's key.
Right. And so with the tabs, I am one that sometimes have 20 tabs at the top too.
Yes.
And I'm like, okay, to where we got to close some of this down. But because I've made time to set that calendar for the week, then the tabs and when I look at the tab and I look at the calendar, there's alignment. So I can close the tabs because it's on my calendar. Or maybe there's something new that came up and I'm like, okay, I don't want to forget that. Then I need to put it on my calendar. And so the way my calendar is set up, there's a space for what needs to be done for the day, but then there's also lines on the side about things to do. Maybe the title of that tab that's open, I'll put on the things to do. So at least I don't forget to plan time for it next week or by the deadline that it needs to be done.
Right. Yeah, that's so key for that. And so we're going to close in a little bit, but I do want to also ask, so there's a quote you said on your website, that says, and you know, the website will be in the description, you know, below, but it says, embrace ownership of your health. It's your birthright.
Mm.
Okay. So tell me some more about that quote.
It's funny you chose that quote because I actually have on the shirt that says "Health and
Oh,
wealth are my
there you
birthright."
go. There you go.
Um, I that quote for me is so profound because it reminds me that it belongs to me again. I truly believe we were born to be healthy. And I truly believe that a part of us gaining wealth beyond financial
Mhm,
is the health. Again, we can't have financial wealth or wealth, period, whether that's legacy or whatever. We can't create a legacy without having health to do that.
mhm,
It's
mhm,
necessary. And so I truly believe that when God said, okay, to where it's time for you to go into the world, he said, you're going to do what I called you to do with health and wealth. You're going to have everything you need to do it, to live the life I called you to live. And a part of that, what you need is health, but you're going to have to own it. It's your birthright to be healthy, but
mhm.
you have a responsibility in maintaining that.
Right.
And so the health, embracing the health as a birthright is owning and accepting the responsibility to be the steward over your health the way that you need to be in order to continue to show up in what you're called to do.
Right. And because it's your birthright, so of course the word birthright in my mind goes back to the biblical story, it's the situation between, I believe it's Esau and Jacob. I hope I get these names right,
Mhm,
and how
mhm,
you know, Esau failed to protect his birthright.
mhm,
So because he didn't protect it early on, because I don't know how much space was between when he gave it up for the soup or you know whatever that was, to whether
mhm,
his father blessed the other brother. Um,
mhm,
but it led to not just a situation in that moment, but it continued and affected him in the future.
mhm,
Like we don't protect the birthright now. You know, we can only imagine because I'm sure he had no idea when he was hungry, and he's like, "Oh, you know, you want the birthright here, take it." In the moment, like what instant gratification is coming back to that, where it's like in the
mhm,
moment, it seemed okay, it seemed like it wasn't a big deal until we
mhm,
fast forward, and it's time to
mhm,
get that blessing from the Father. And he's like, I mean, he gave him a piece of blessing, you know, but he didn't get the full that was his birthright. He didn't get the
mhm,
fullness of it. So that's also what when it stood out to me about it's your birthright.
mhm.
Um, you know, God talks about how He's given us everything for life and godliness, and so it's ours, but we do have to cultivate and protect.
Right. And as you were talking it, it with the birthright, and even made me think about just, if we could talk about or think about for a moment just the things that are prevalent in society, right? With um diseases such as heart disease and diabetes, right? And obesity.
Mhm.
A lot of those are so high because of lifestyle choices,
Right, right,
things we choose to do and not to do,
right,
things that we are making choices to do. And so for some people, don't get me wrong, it's because of when they'll say, oh, it's hereditary.
mhm,
What I believe is hereditary, and I won't say certain diseases are not. But
right,
what I will say is that so are the lifestyle choices. The habits are hereditary too. So
right,
if you used to not, if you saw no one exercising in your house, that mindset is hereditary.
right,
If you saw people eating fried food all the time, that mindset is hereditary. If you saw your family consuming sugar laced, things all the time, that's hereditary. That's hereditary too. So we are sacrificing our birthright to live in health and wellness for the gratification of food,
right,
regardless at whatever price, right?
right,
And then also just if we think about the finances, the financial part of it, or our needs being met, according to society, it's gratifying to have more than what you need.
right,
So at what point, if we're not storing up to save for an emergency, and we'll just stop right there. We won't even go beyond an emergency fund,
right,
but we gotta have the latest and the greatest,
right,
shoes that come out,
right,
the Yeezys, the Jordans, whatever the case may be, but our finances not set up like that,
right,
then
right,
we're sacrificing our birthright of having our needs met just to be able to say and post on the gram or wherever else platforms we have that we have the latest and the greatest.
Right.
That's sacrificing our birthright. We're willing to give up what God says you're supposed to. I made sure you have this
Mm-hmm.
in order to have that.
Right. Yeah, you're so right. Makes me think of somebody who, her hair will be laid, but she can't pay the rent. And I'm not talking about, I call it cheap hair because now it's so expensive.
Mhm.
But and I started to say this is a woman's problem, but no, men too.
Mhm.
We're not gonna get into that today. We're not gonna get into that. So I want to say thank you so much for this conversation. I don't know who else, but I've caught so many nuggets that I am going to have to go back and view this again, listen to this again, catch the nuggets, ask God, okay, how does this apply to my life? What can I use to position myself for momentum? And then also help me to adopt, align myself to the fact that health is wealth, wellness is wealth, and that if we don't take care of ourselves and replace that for business tasks, because you can do both. But if you just say, I'm not going to think about this in the now, in the instant, what will happen to you in your business? Because what good will your business be if you're too sick to run it?
Right. Exactly.
It started not in that moment when you got sick, but it started years prior.
Mhm.
Many habits before, many
Mhm.
priorities before. So this is so powerful. All right, so as we close, Tuere, tell me, how do you serve in the marketplace right now, and how can people make contact with you?
So, in the marketplace right now, what I'm doing, I actually just ended the first one, but God is confirming it's not going to be the last. Small group with women, and it's called the Reclamation Journey. And so we took 12 weeks to do root work using the I Dare You to Live bundle, which is the book, the journal, and the affirmation cards. And so we worked through it. And so that is how I am showing up right now, creating those safe spaces where women can do that, and we are traveling partners together in that. In addition to speaking at events that focus on promoting health and wellness, or speaking in groups that focus on promoting health and wellness. But also, like I said earlier when we first started, just being intentional about empowering, educating, and exposing working mothers and working wives to resources that they need to help change their mindset about investing in their wellness first so they can continue to show up in those spaces that they're called to. People can find me at empoweredtofit.com. They can find me at Empowered to Fit on Instagram as well as Facebook. And so I am just out there collaborating and connecting with those that are intentionally having the uncomfortable conversations about health and wellness beyond just workout, and beyond just eating, but around the 8 dimensions that we talked about earlier, because there's work to be done. And we have a legacy of children and youth coming up behind us that we got to leave the marks for them to follow. So
Absolutely. And all those links she talked about, you'll be able to find them in the description below. Also, she does something that I really enjoy called 2-Minute Tuesdays. And you can find, I think it's on Instagram. It's on Instagram, and you can find it. Only 2 minutes, investing only 2 minutes just to get some encouragement and some revelation. So thank you again so much for all of the information for this momentous conversation that we had. I know this will not be our last one. And to all you Kingdom entrepreneurs, have a great, amazing week. See ya.
thank you, Michelle.